Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients powered by Next Gen Chef. Today we have Dan Kurzrock, who is the co-founder of ReGrained. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Justine. Great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited to have you here and for our listeners to get to know you.
Yeah, no, me too. Hopefully I you know, don't let anyone down with this Christmas Eve recording. This is
What better things do we have to do on Christmas Eve day, right? I mean,
that's right.
So anyway, I'm glad to be here and I'm glad to have you here. And I think our listeners will be too, because there's a lot that we can chat about. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So I'd love for you just to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. I always hate to read them from people's bios. They just never do anyone justice and it's a bit of a bore. So
Yeah, also I hate listening to the bio, even though I probably wrote the one that you would read. So I'm happy to
I
introduce
feel the
myself.
same way, but I hate
Yeah.
listening to my voice.
So yeah, hi everybody. My name is Dan Kurzrock. I'm the co-founder, chief grain officer. That was my cute way of saying CEO of ReGrained. I'm also the co-founder of an executive board member on the Upcycled Food Association, which maybe we'll spend some time talking about as well. I founded ReGrained, which is we're a food tech company, as I would describe ourselves now. We really play in the ingredient space. We make packaged foods. What we focus on is finding kind of overlooked, underutilized value in the food system. So basically finding ingredients, talking about essential ingredients, right, on this show. We're talking about finding ingredients that have been really hiding in plain sight and kind of being left off the table of our food system, and using some innovative technologies to actually bring them in to to product developers and to market. So we primarily right now work with grain from breweries that they've already used to brew beer. I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about that. But what a lot of people don't realize is that our company also is applying the same technology and process to things like the oats left over from the oat milk process and other ingredients that have kind of traditionally been considered byproducts, because you can't create their co-product without also creating this that's not core part of the production process. But that doesn't mean it can't be used better. And so we're here to really promote the best use for food, feeding people, reducing waste. Great way to address the climate crisis and create some delicious food that's just better for people and the planet. And I've been doing it for like 10 years and I love it. And I'm stoked to spend a little bit of time chatting about it with you today.
I'm so excited. And as you were talking about what you're doing and both the association as well as ReGrained, I realize there's so many different things that I want to touch on. But I'd like to just start at the beginning first and have you share a little bit about your story about where this all got started.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was some grand plan that was, hatched from a great course or something in college or whatnot. But really I stumbled into this as an underage home brewer. So I was at UCLA and learned how to make beer in my freshman year of college. I, as a kind of crafty entrepreneurial student, I really fell in love with this idea that it was actually perfectly legal to go buy the ingredients and the equipment to brew your own beer. And I had a close friend, who's my roommate freshman year, and still remains to this day to be a very close friend, who actually learned how to make beer from his uncle and came back after winter break our freshman year. And he was like, Dan, we gotta make beer. And so we really fell in love with the hobby. We were making 5-gallon batches of beer. That's like a third of a keg. We were doing it every week. We eventually moved I'm embarrassed to admit, into a fraternity house. I lived in a fraternity house for a few years in college, which was great because we actually had a commercial kitchen that the chef let us use, or maybe chef is a generous word, the cook let us use, because we had a great relationship with, and actually commandeered a closet to use for fermentation as well, and got really into this hobby for making beer. And Justine, have you ever made beer before? By the way, I know you make all kinds of food.
No, I've never made beer, but I would like to. I'm really intrigued by those kits that they have, and I wanted to, I just haven't.
So if you can make bread, you can make beer. I mean, it's virtually got the same ingredients. There's only 4 ingredients in the beer making process. There is barley, malt, so grain, right? That's like the beer equivalent of flour. There are hops, which is what everyone knows about. It's kind of the especially with like IPAs and things like that, very popular ingredient. Water, core ingredient of beer, and yeast, which is really where the magic happens. The yeast is what is contributing to the fermentation and the creation of the alcohol and everything that we like about the way that we feel when we drink beer. And so when you're making beer, you use a lot of grain, about a pound for every 6-pack, and you're basically extracting the sugars from the grain, and that's what ferments, the beer making process. But you're left with all the insoluble nutrition. So you've got fiber, you've got protein, you have there's a lot of actually phenolic compounds and other nutritional benefits that are actually not able to make it into the beer physically. It's like having a giant batch of oatmeal kind of that you're creating when you're making beer. So 5-gallon batches, it's a third of a keg, pound per every 6-pack. It's approximately 20-30 pounds of grain that we were using every time we made a batch of beer. I grew up in Northern California with a vegetable garden in the backyard and a compost service, readily available. I was shocked to be, and I'm sure it's different now, but in LA at the time, there was not a compost service, let alone a vegetable garden or farm animals or anything like that. And so every time we made a batch of beer, I was literally taking this cooler full of food and tipping it into the dumpster, and something just felt wrong about that. And while we didn't have farm animals around, we did have party animals, right? Lots of people around all the time, and so started taking. Had an idea, basically like tasted it and was like, oh, this stuff tastes pretty good. Did some research, learned that it was pretty nutritious, and came up with an idea to make bread actually with the grain, which I would then sell to friends, people around the house, and then use the revenue from that to buy more ingredients to brew more beer for free. And so today ReGrained is this company that, we're really trying to promote a more resilient food system, that does more with less, circular economy. There's a lot of mission behind what we're doing, but early on, it was really born out of this idea to have one hobby that could fund another hobby and just be clever, and have some fun with it. The more and more we did it, the bigger and bigger we realized the idea was, but the origin was, I suppose, in illicit home brewing, although, it wasn't illegal as long as we didn't drink what we were creating, which of course we never did. It was just about creating the beer, and led to what has been my life's work to date, and it's been really exciting.
That's great. That's really funny how it all evolves, right? And so you went from making beer in these kegs to then evolving and creating this new product and using it. It's really interesting. And so now today, it's a new product, and you've created this association too.
Yeah, and
It's
just
now a movement
I
almost
realized I should maybe complete kind of what it is that we're actually doing today. So
for the listeners, because they may not know.
yeah, so our main ingredient, we call it Super Grain Plus. It's a powder. Think of it like a flour. It can be used to make all kinds of new food products. And as we started thinking about, as I started thinking about what this business could be when, back in college, realized, there's billions and billions of pounds of this grain available. This is right around when craft beer was booming too, and started asking some bigger questions about what commercial breweries were doing, and realized that the best way to build like a big business could be to create an ingredient company that's kind of connecting the dots between the supply from commercial breweries and food companies that could use the ingredient to make new food products. Before that, the original idea was, okay, we should have a brewery that's also a bakery. So a lot of people think that you come up with a business idea and you just kind of pursue that, with a myopic intensity, which
happen that way.
Things, they people like to talk about pivoting, and there's all this jargon you can use to talk about it. But the reality is that you start with one idea and it gets you down a path. And when you're building a business, kind of like when you're, I don't know if you're like a downhill skier or anything like that, like I am, I like to think about it in these terms where you're like, you can try and plan what you want to do on a given run or something, but really you can only see if you so many yards in front of you at a time, and you have to make real-time decisions, and you end up where you end up. And
it changes too as you learn new things, or the climate changes, or the world changes, or you meet new people, or it all changes. And as we learn new things, Next Gen Chef has changed, right?
Oh, totally.
As we've made new partnerships, and as the world changes, and as we need new things in the world.
Yeah, I mean, and this year's been a great example of that, right? Like no one, saw the pandemic coming, and it forced a lot of different kinds of changes. Unfortunately, many of them for the worse, but there's definitely some silver lining around it. And back then, no one was even talking. It's 2010, 2011 when I really started focusing on ReGrained in earnest, and no one was even talking about food waste. That's really started hitting the kind of global awareness and 2014 with Dana Gunder's landmark NRDC report, Wasted, where that first quantified that 40% of all food that we're growing is going to waste. It was just kind of a common sense thing. And it's not the most, we get a lot of credit for being like innovative and creative in what we're doing. And while I appreciate that, like it's really not the most revolutionary idea to do more with less. I mean, that's fundamentally what we've been doing as humans forever. I mean, any chef will tell you, especially any trained chef, that like you use every part of the vegetable of the animal. Even industrially, if you look at like products like whey protein. Whey protein is created as a byproduct from cheese making. For a while, like years and years and years, decades, that it was going to agricultural use or just being disposed of generally. And then of course a huge market's emerged for whey protein as as an ingredient, and now you have whey producers where cheese is the byproduct, right? So it's baby carrots are not baby carrots. They're not grown as little tiny carrots, right? They're cosmetically imperfect carrots that are cut down to be baby carrot size. This idea, we call it upcycling, and there's a full philosophy behind upcycling, and bottom line environmental goals that come with it. But the idea itself is pretty common sense business. Like no one likes waste. Waste is not good for anyone. It's better for everybody to put things to the highest use possible, which in the case of food is feeding people. So what we had to do is figure out a way to actually operationalize that. Like we weren't the first to come up with the idea of putting brewer's grain into human food, but there was some technical hurdles as to how that could be done in a safe way and an economical way. And we ended up working with the USDA actually over in Albany, and we have a patent on what we created to do that, which has really provided the infrastructure to scale our business in a really exciting way. And then the last thing I should say, I realize I get really excited and talk a lot, but so we're an ingredient company, but we have consumer, and you're on mute, Justine, by the way. We have consumer products as well that are distributed in the market. We have a snack product. They're like puffed chips. They're a really cool product. We're not a consumer products company. We have those out there so that we can get something to everyday people to try, Super Grain Plus, to try upcycled ingredients, to tasting is believing, right? And with and with doing that, we can help build the market for the ingredients and the bigger picture vision that we're trying to create.
Right. No. So there's a couple of things. One is you mentioned the restaurant Wasted, right?
No, I actually was talking about the report Wasted from the NRD.
Oh, okay. But there was also a restaurant Wasted. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about the chef that I believe you worked with, or from, oh my God, New York.
Dan Barber?
Yes.
So I don't know Dan Barber personally. He's definitely like a culinary
Dan
hero.
Barber. Was it Dan Barber? He's upstate New York.
Blue Hill and Stone Pines. Yeah.
But maybe it wasn't Dan Barber. I'm trying to think of his name.
Well, so his culinary director is Adam Kay.
That's Adam Kay. He knows you.
Yeah. So Adam Kay and now he's doing this Spare Food Co. They're doing
Spare Food. Exactly. Yeah. He was on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Oh, great. Yeah. Huge fan of Adam. It's been awesome getting to know him over the years, and his work over at Blue Hill with Dan Barber, who's been a huge advocate of, among other things like plant-based diets and whatnot, of also, using underutilized ingredients, like squash stems and things you wouldn't think of.
That's what he was talking about, and we were talking about you actually on the podcast.
Oh, lovely.
So we should probably put these podcasts next to each other so that people can hear about you on the first one, and then on this one they'll then learn more about you, or vice versa. But in any case, because we were talking a little bit about that, but I wanted to then bring up the idea of working directly with chefs and putting this in the hands of chefs and the impact it could have then, by working directly with chefs, because I think that working directly with chefs can have a large impact.
Yeah, and we actually actively do work, with chefs. Not so much, not that we're not selling much into restaurants right now. That's something that we're interested in the years to come, but we've done a lot of work with chefs, with trained chefs, with as well as research chefs, around really exploring the culinary potential of Super Grain Plus. So initially, I was making bread. I mentioned that. Some people know us for the nutrition bars that we've made for.
That's what I knew you as first, the nutrition
Yeah.
bars. Like, I wonder if our listeners are familiar with them, because for me, that was like the first thing I knew about ReGrained were the bars. I'd see them
Yeah,
at
which is why
Costco.
we did it, right? We had to put something out there, that people could try. And the bars, we're actually not making bars anymore. It's not part of the long-term strategy, really. But, we had them in a few thousand stores at one point, and it was a product to put out there. But, concurrently with that, we were also working with chefs to figure out, okay, well, what else can we do with this ingredient? How does it work in pizza? How does it work in crackers? How does it work in even like plant-based meat systems or beverages? Or we had a chef pretty early on that discovered that he really liked to use the ingredient as a in like a roux, to thicken the roux instead of like toasting a flour, because it's got some nice toasty kind of malty notes that add some complexity to it. Actually, Chef Adam has made a bunch of really interesting stuff with with our ingredient, really pushing the limits of it. And what that helped us do, working with these chefs, is to really expand, all the different ways that we could see this ingredient being used. And that's important because there's so much of this grain generated every year by the brewing industries, and same with other beverages. There's all kinds of byproducts that are out there, billions and billions of pounds. So like we could be, just put it in perspective, let's say we sold $100 million a year of nutrition bars. That would be a successful company, right? Like our X bar sold to Kellogg for like
So financially, that's a successful company. But I'm curious, what's the impact it's having, just in terms of, because it's upcycling, because it's using product? What's the impact it's having globally, or on the world?
Yeah, it's about resources and putting them to best use. So like, if we were in $100 million company, we'd only work with like 2 or 3 breweries. That's why being an ingredient company is so important to us, is because we can put much more volume of this ingredient to best use. If you look at just like food, and one of the resources that goes into producing food is water, right?
Right.
So when you waste food, you're also wasting the water, for example, that's in the crop. In beer making, 90% of the water footprints in the agricultural supply chain, mostly in the grain. So it takes over 300 gallons of water, about 330 gallons of water, to produce the barley malt that goes into 1 6-pack of beer.
Wow.
That's the equivalent of like a 2-hour shower, right? And so that's just 1 6-pack of beer. So what we can do is actually, instead of having.
Sorry, can you say that again? So 1 6-pack of beer, just so our listeners can hear this. 1 6-pack of beer. Say that again, please.
Yeah, it uses about 1 pound of grain. These are averages, right? So
Right,
one pound of grain approximately for 1 6-pack of beer. That 1 pound of grain takes the equivalent of approximately a 2-hour shower, about 330 gallons of water to produce. And so with upcycling, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, all these resources have already been, expended on producing this product. Yeah, so like, let's put it to best use. Like, instead of composting, or animal feed or energy generation, like if we can feed same principles behind plant-based diets, right? It's like, let's keep, let's reduce entropy, right? Let's keep as much, at the top of the, the food chain as possible, feeding people. And so that's, one metric that you can think of is like why it makes sense to upcycle, why it makes sense to reduce food waste. Because when you're wasting food, you're not just wasting like nutrition and flavor and whatnot, you're also wasting all the resources that went into producing that crop in the first place. And so it's kind of like found food, right? We're not cultivating new crops. We're actually creating new crops by connecting dots in new ways, throughout disparate parts of the, the food system that are kind of hidden, for most people.
Yeah, I was having a conversation, interestingly enough, on an earlier podcast where somebody was saying they don't like to call it food waste. They like to call it, like, there was another word. Now I'm having a bit of a brain freeze, of course, but there was a better word for it. I'm going to find it and share it with you, because we can edit this out so that they don't have to say it. But it was
food waste. I mean, waste is a terrible term, right?
Because it's a terrible term. But there was a much better term, and I'd love to tell it to you, because I really liked it. Like, it was good what she used, and it was called food, like unused food, like unused food or extra food or something like that.
Yeah, well, Adam's company is actually called Spare Food Co. And so they're
on that conversation. It was on that conversation.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
it's
what it was
not
called.
waste.
No, it's spare food. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
Because they don't like to call it food waste, because
Yeah.
the truth is it's food that falls off of a tree that wasn't wasted. It was just, it fell off, or it was this, or it was that. It was spare food.
Yeah, and the whole idea of waste is a human construct to begin with, right? Like in nature, there is no waste.
Yeah.
There's actually a tenet of what's a biomimicry called, where that's actually like waste equals food. So like outputs equal inputs. We've got closed loop systems. We are creating waste and not you putting things to their best use. Now, with what I want to be clear though, like with what we're doing with upcycling, at least as it relates to byproducts, we're not always diverting from landfill. I mean, landfill is like the worst possible place that this can end up, because when food ends up in landfill, it breaks down into methane, which is like an extremely potent greenhouse gas, and horrible
Right.
there. But there's all kinds. There's a whole hierarchy of uses. So above landfill is compost. Like compost is better than landfill, but it's not necessarily the best use. So upcycling is all about promoting the best use. So brewer's grain, mostly by volume, is going to animal feed. It's going to feed cattle predominantly. Which is, a whole
So
other.
how could people, like, if people want to, on a personal level, right? People are all about composting, and people want to, on a personal level, do better. How can people do better on a personal level?
Yeah, well, so a lot of food waste actually happens at home. And so
Right.
there's ways that you can upcycle at home, and also just generally reduce waste at home and we've got a lot of these resources on our website for people to check out. But like something as simple, this is an upcycling, but something as simple as making a meal plan actually makes a huge impact. Or having like in your fridge, having a section where it's like a use first fridge. So there's this idea in supply chain management of like first in, first out, right? And so making sure that your fridge is organized in a way so you can find things that have been in there the longest and put them to best use. We just posted a recipe for like a soup, for example, that will use up some veggies that might be wilting in the fridge, and you can upcycle them into soup. There's, let's say you roast a chicken. You eat the chicken the first night. The second night, maybe you make like tacos or something like that. Then the third night you use everything that's left and you make a soup, right? Like there's, lots of things like that you can do at home. There's a lot of misconceptions around date labels as well. So a lot of people think you see a label on a product that product expires when it's really a best by date. And actually the only federally regulated date label that exists out there. Could you guess what product has the only regulated date label, Justine?
I was going to say milk originally, but I don't think it's milk.
Yeah, it's close. And not milk, but infant formula is the only.
That makes sense, because like I would imagine with kids and with that kind of thing, that's more highly regulated.
Yeah, but you would think maybe that like more products would have some guidance around what the actual.
Definitely.
And so what the result is you get, these codes that are put on there, which primarily for the distributors and the retailers, so that they can manage, freshness and quality and whatnot. But then they create confusion for the consumer. And so you get home and you see, I don't know, a pack of almonds or something with an expiration date, and you throw it out. Whereas like,
right,
you chop it up and bake with it, because it's not going to be maybe as fresh as like a snackable almond, but it can still be, used in food. And so it's actually about 40% of food waste happens at home. And so there's a lot that we can be doing just as humans around, what we eat and how we eat it, and getting creative. And one of the other things I like to advocate to, you'll probably like this as a chef, Justine, is like shifting the mentality of when you're thinking about dinner, for example. There's this, you often ask this question, what do I want for dinner?
Right. All the time.
You instead ask, what do I have for dinner?
All the time.
Then you can tend to get a little more creative, and you'll use things up, as opposed to being like, oh, I need to go to the store and get all these ingredients. It's like, no, what do I already have, and what can I make with what I have? And kind of shifting your thinking there is can make a big difference across the long run, for sure.
And I've started to do that as well, thinking about what do I have to make, and thinking about what I want sometimes just for like Christmas, where I'd really like some dim sum, but I'm not thinking that's not going to work this year. Because all good Jews have Chinese food on Christmas, apparently.
To go,
To go. I know, I've been Googling, where can I get Chinese food to go on Christmas?
Yeah, dim sum. There's great dim sum to go on Clement Street, actually.
Okay, can you send me the link?
Yeah, for sure.
I even texted Alex on, her, Alex from, she's got the thing on Facebook. It's like,
I'm sure I know who you're talking about, but that's maybe
group. She's got the group, like.
Oh, Alex Wall. Yeah.
Alex Wall. Yes, Alex Wall. I texted her to ask her for a recommendation too.
Yeah.
Jews and food or something.
Yeah.
Yes. So, those things, like I kind of like to stick to, I'll make a recipe for the holidays, or if I want crabs for New Year. That sounded terrible. I want crabs for New Year's.
On my wish list.
It's on my wish list to have crabs. That's awful. But you get what I'm saying anyway. We'll have
Yeah.
to edit that part because it doesn't sound good. But in any event, so you know what I want to learn a little bit more about, because we've talked a little bit about ReGrained, and we've talked a little bit about upcycling, and we've talked a little bit about how people themselves can manage upcycling in their homes, where that's some of the greatest waste we see. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about this association that you mentioned. If you could tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in like the food system and systems level solutions, right, to addressing something that's actually, it's a market failure, right? It's created, where market forces have failed, and so there's kind of a lot of dynamics, at play there. But one of the things that can be done is to foster like cross-sectoral collaboration. So that's, between business and government, kind of like what we did with USDA, as well as, pre-competitive or non-competitive collaboration, within an industry, which can be done through something like a trade association. And so the Upcycled Food Association, there's actually two organizations. They're run by the same, group that we're part of. There's a foundation and an association. The association's for members. The foundation is for like consumer education and things like that. And we co-founded this with, a handful of other brands. There's, I think, 7 of us originally, and there's staff, for the association. The founder is Turner Wyatt. He's the CEO. And the goal was to bring together, create a center of gravity, really, to bring together all kinds of, players within the upcycled food world, and have some pretty clear goals around what we want to do. From just a pure numbers standpoint, though, we started with 7 companies. We now have over 130, coming up actually 150 pretty soon. We've got some global players, big companies that have joined, like Dole.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting year for it. We've only been around for 1 year officially.
Wow, that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, and so
during this year.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and in the COVID year, right? So one of the first things that we got done was a formal and pretty academic, honestly, definition of upcycled food. So defining upcycled food, what is it? What is it not? And then building upon that, we've actually created, and we're now at the tail end of this, we should be able to release it in Q1, the world's first certified upcycled food program. So we have an actual third-party certification that we're creating to certify products as being upcycled, which has been a huge effort, in there. So we've created the definition, we've grown our membership, we've got the certification process that will be coming out next year. And the whole goal is to help support the development of a market. So building demand, which will then increase the supply that is going to service that. And then when we're talking about increasing supply as it relates to upcycled foods, that supply chain is what is directly reducing food that would otherwise be wasted, right? And so it's all about creating a market to build a healthier, more resilient food system that puts ingredients to their best use, feeding people. Now, food was for people is where we started, but we also have groups that are looking at doing companion pet food, think like dog food, cat food, stuff like that. There's some cosmetics companies that are looking at upcycled opportunities, because not everything is edible, right? And there's things to better use. And so what we're trying to do as an association, as an organization, is really provide the platform, for companies to have, well, first of all, like that leadership, right, of creating definitions and certifications and common voice, right, but also a place to interact with one another. And we already have a lot of great collaborations that have come between brands that are in there, and it's been really exciting.
That's great. That's super exciting. It's actually, it's really refreshing to see that, because for Next Gen Chef, one of the things that I am trying to build is an association around that, like a stamp of approval, so that it's local, healthy, regenerative, and all those kinds of things. So it's, similar but different, because, right? But so I'm inspired to hear your story, because it's similar to what I hope to build. Of course, I haven't done that. I'm still working on it, but as I hear yours, I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. So I hope as we hear the listeners are listening and they hear your story, they'll be inspired to be able to go off then, and whether they're a business, participate in it, or as a consumer, look for that.
Yeah, there's a role for everybody for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Both
So,
being next gen chef and participating in the upcycled food movement.
definitely, definitely. And I hope to learn more about how you created it as well, because it's a big deal, you know, as I'm looking at it, building Next Gen Chef and that certification, building out that definition is no easy feat. Um, and coming up with the words that you want to do and making it encompassing, you know, to make sure that it encompasses what you want and not too limiting, but not too specific, and
Well,
figuring it all out. I'm
yeah.
sure it was a big deal for you guys.
Yeah, well, it's all about team, right? Like the whole point is that it wasn't just ReGrained. It wasn't
Right.
just, Renewal Mill. It wasn't just Imperfect Foods. It was like all of us and more coming together. And, collectively, we're greater than the sum of our parts. And that also means that you have to let go of control, right? Like, is the definition exactly how I would word it? No, is the certificate, is it, but the whole point, like the certification, for example, there was a committee of, I think it was 18 or 20 people. I should know that because I was on the board support group for the committee, but really impressive people that like helped create the, the organic and non-GMO certifications were on it. Academics, we've done a lot of collaboration with like Drexel University as well as UC Davis, and have, PhDs that are involved. It's all about creating a brain trust, or grain trust, as I would say, but we're not all grain companies, and letting creating a movement that's bigger than yourself. And so, it starts by having a team that can kind of create that, I've said this a few times, like center of gravity, right? That creates a place for people to come to be drawn to, and then making sure that you're not doing things in silos, and you're really engaging all these different stakeholders and bringing them together to do something that hopefully across the long run is really powerful and becomes one of the next central like tenets of the food system. You got your organic, your non-GMO, your fair trade, right?
Exactly. And I think it's so important to surround yourself with all these different experts in the industry that have different experience.
Especially when you know nothing, like me, right? I mean, you gotta surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that have seen the movie before. It's like the only
I
real
do
way.
that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I move in the world. I got to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me.
That's right. Yeah,
That's why you're here.
my motto.
So Dan, I know you have so much going on with ReGrained too, and you've got a lot of new things coming down the pipeline. You've had a lot of new stuff that just went down recently. And I'd love you to be able to share just a little bit about that so people can hear what's going on at ReGrained, what to look forward to, if you would.
Yeah. So tons going on with ReGrained. We just released this new snack this year, the puffs, which are.
Do you have any visual aids?
No.
People watching the YouTube video?
I don't have them in my.
Okay, I love a visual aid, so I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I should walk over to the kitchen. But yeah, they're a great snack. Even if you don't know that they're upcycled, was kind of the idea. And they're in distribution, growing. It's been an interesting year to get a new product out there. So we've done a lot of e-commerce, selling through Imperfect Foods, and we're in places like REI, with them, and we got a launch with a Kroger division coming up. But like this year, a lot of stuff that was supposed to happen is going to happen in 2021. That's just kind of how it goes. We just concluded our second equity crowdfunding campaign. So one of the interesting things about ReGrained is that we're owned actually by our customers. So we have over 1,000 investors that are not just elite rich folks, which it's great. Love having like traditional angel investors too. We've got some great angel investors as well that have helped get ReGrained going. But these are people that have invested a minimum of $250 in the company, right? So 3-figure checks. And it was a really exciting way to democratize venture capital. And we did it first in 2018, and we just did one on WeFunder that just closed last month. That was really an exciting achievement for the business. It's something that I really see as strategic capital, because we're trying to build a movement, right, and engage as many people as possible. I think it's a really important part of the frontier of how especially triple bottom line businesses will get funded, you know, in the future. We have a plant in Berkeley that we've been hard at work at opening. We, you know, with our patented machine. So we got our patent last year, and we built the machine to that spec, and we've got our plant that's like just about ready to go, cranking out, you know, product. And we're talking, this will be a whole order of magnitude difference. We'll be doing in like a day what we do today in a week. In this new plant, we've got some really exciting partnerships going with other food companies. We've got dozens, like many dozens actually, of active projects of, you know, with bakeries and snack companies and restaurants and, you know, all kinds of different groups that are looking at different ways that they can use upcycled ingredients in their products. And so, you know, if anyone listening out there has a food company that's interested in upcycled food innovation, that's something that we would love to work together on. You know, and in the year ahead, it's, you know, it's hard to make predictions these days, right? I think everyone's boat got, you know, rocked pretty hard. You know, this year, we're very grateful to be able to continue to build our business, you know, accomplish the things that we did this year, and still, you know, be able to push on ahead. You know, there's certainly a lot that we're trying to do. You know, as a business, we've got you know, a lot of indications that we're going to be able to pull this thing off, but we know that we're not able to do that alone. And so we're, you know, super grateful to all of our kind of community and the various stakeholders, whether it's, you know, retail buyers or you know, product developers at other companies, or, you know, our end customers, or people like you, Justine. You know, it's you know, we can only build a better food system if we do it together. And, you know, ReGrained hopes to be a really big part of that, and everything that we're doing is trying to help us, you know, kind of march towards that goal. You're on mute.
It's a common theme, apparently. I keep having to mute the dogs. Sorry.
All right.
I'm just guessing the listeners don't want to hear the dogs barking over you. So
sometimes dogs have good points to make, you know.
Always. They always have a good point to make.
Tweetable insights.
So what I was going to say, no, I agree with you though. I think that for me, at least, I always think it's more fun to do together. It's more, I can get more done together. We have better ideas together. So one of the things, you know, while I'm a solo entrepreneur because I don't have any partners, I've always wanted to have partners. So while I don't have a partner per se, and of course our listeners can't see my air quotes, but, you know, I've always wanted to bring on a partner or, you know, somebody with me at Next Gen Chef while I host Essential Ingredients myself. Because I always thought that it'd be more fun to do together. We'd be able to cover more ground. We'd be able to create a bigger movement. So in the meantime, the only thing I know how to do is create partnerships with people like yourself and other organizations and people like, you know, at the Haas School of Business at Berkeley and other people changing the future of food, thought leaders and innovators, so that I can help move the needle just a little bit and to give you and other entrepreneurs a vehicle and a platform to have a voice and share what they're doing. So, you know, that's me playing my part in this, because I want people
probably more impactful than you realize. And, you know, people like me, you know, we appreciate it. It's yeah, so keep on keeping. I don't know how you do it alone. I wouldn't be able to do it alone, but you know, I guess your point is that you're not, you know, truly alone, right? Is that you've got,
I'm not truly alone. I wish I had, you know, I wish that there was a partner with me, you know, making it happen. So in lieu of that,
I need a listener calling in, offering their partnership potentially now.
Well, you never know. We'll put this podcast out. Maybe one of our listeners will shoot me a note.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I thank you, Dan, for joining us. But do you have maybe you can share a few tips. You know, we do have a variety of founders that listen to these podcasts, and they're building better for you businesses. And as an entrepreneur that has built your own better for you business, maybe there's a few tips that you could share.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows what they're doing. So that's important to remember. So don't let that like stop you from
Number one, no one knows what they're doing.
You know, a lot of people get caught up on just taking action on their ideas in the first place. You know, that's really what entrepreneurship is all about, is like putting creativity and, you know, in action, not just coming up with a perfect plan, because, you know, you know, you hear there's all kinds of like adages about, you know, perfection can get in the way of progress and whatnot. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. You know, that sort of thing. It's all true. It's true. Like you can't you create your own opportunities to be lucky by putting yourself out there. And luck, luck is a really important part of that, of the long-term success. I've been extraordinarily lucky, in doing this. Although I'd like to think, one of the ways that I've contributed towards being lucky is by trying to generate opportunities, right? By trying to put ourselves out there and saying yes to things and asking for help and offering help and just like making those connections. And so I don't know. I mean, there's that is probably the one like takeaway that I hope people have, is that they need to just take action on their ideas, do something, and then see what happens, and
don't get stuck in the process.
There, keep going forward. But yeah, no one knows what they're doing, so don't let that scare you. Yeah.
The one thing is people get paralyzed by process. I know that's like a little cliche that people say, but it's true. People do get paralyzed by process. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest frustration I see. I get frustrated when I see people that are stuck and paralyzed by that.
Yeah.
Just go, ask some questions, put it out there, see if people like it, see what people think. Just stop asking.
Our first product was bad. Like our first version of the bars, first two versions of the bars, arguably, were like, they tasted like a good idea. They were not gonna sell a ton of product. But we had to put something out there so that we could see if our idea was real, and it's, you're going to change things like a million times. And would I do things differently in hindsight, different parts along the, sure, because I know a lot more now than I did then. But, I was a 21-year-old entrepreneur trying to figure it out. And you do that by making some mistakes, right? Talk about cliches, can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, right? So
that's a good one. I like it. So, well, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on today. And before we go, two last questions. Do you have a favorite ReGrained product?
The Mexican street corn puffs are probably my favorite like commercial product that's available out there. Although probably my favorite like application of our ingredient that I've ever tasted. Actually, Byright just came out with an ice cream that has ReGrained that's really good. And also I love, I've had a bunch of really great pizzas that have been made with our stuff. I love pizza, so that's one of my.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go try all of the. I need like I need to go try them all. We need like a ReGrained like map of places to go, like a little treasure hunt of all places
coming in 2021. We'll put that on the.
That's cute, right?
Yeah.
An upcycled little treasure map of places to go with all things upcycled.
That'd be great.
Essential ingredients.
Powered by Untitled Chapter.
Okay, so for our listeners today that have listened all the way through, do you have anything special for them?
Well, we do have a discount code.
That's pretty special.
On ReGrained.com. It'll give you a 15% off your first order if you want. But also just, love to hear from folks directly. I'm Dan at ReGrained, really easy to find. It's great to connect and do this all together. So, thanks again, Justine, for having me. Thanks to whoever, suffered through my babbling for this entire episode. Hopefully there was, a nugget or two that was insightful, and I'm looking forward to, a better year ahead.
And and for any of you listeners that are interested in some of those resources that Dan mentioned, ReGrained.com has a list of them, right?
Yes.
For upcycling. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to the Essential Ingredients channel on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, on any of the apps that you like. And we hope that you'll subscribe and download. We're here every Tuesday with a new episode. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you here again next week on Tuesday. I want to thank my guests and my listeners for joining me today at Essential Ingredients. If you like this episode and you want to make sure not to miss any others, please subscribe. You can find us on all the large channels, including iTunes. And I hope that you'll make sure to follow us and share it with your friends. For more information about Essential Ingredients, you can check out the website justinereichman.com. You can follow myself on Instagram and Facebook at Justine Reichman. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Next Gen Chef and the platform that powers this podcast, you can find us at nextgenchef.com, on Instagram, Facebook, and all the other social media outlets. I hope to hear from you and see you again soon.